The process of Native American agriculture has been around for hundreds of years and, yes, is in fact very sustainable. The reason why the traditional ways aren't used in modern farming is the products that are produced are not in primary demand. In this video, we'll find out how Native Americans' agricultural methods might circumvent the impact of climate change in spite of many challenges. First, how has climate change been currently affecting agriculture? Climate change has impacted agriculture now for many years, and it's only gotten progressively worse, with fires ravaging throughout many countries, including but not limited to the United States. The fires are caused by the increase of heat and dryness to a land that's already become scorched by lack of water, which enriches the soil and provides nutrients to the crops. The dryness also affects the organic material in trees that burn stronger and causes the fire to spread. This is especially true for the western part of the U.S., which has seen twice as many wildfires from 1984 to the year 2015. Wildfires are not only damaging to the land, but they are costly and can damage health as well as homes and entire communities. They're also affecting the way animals live and where they live, driving some animals like elk in Colorado, for instance, closer to communities and away from the woods, placing them in potentially dangerous situations like getting run over by vehicles. In order to preserve wildlife in the land, farmers have to consider where they're cultivating and how, so that the land's ecosystems are not damaged by their farming techniques. Keep watching to find out how the Native Americans did this without disrupting the land or the wildlife that live there. How have Native Americans conserved their land? For hundreds, if not thousands of years, Native American tribes have used effective farming techniques that have not involved technology. They knew intuitively what could best irrigate the land and to produce an abundance of crops. Some of these methods, like rock wall terracing in the southwest United States, as well as using canals for irrigation and cultivating the floodplains, have been especially fruitful for water conservation in drier areas. When they formed, they took extra good care of the natural land, as Native Americans for centuries have respected the environment as living things. For instance, they see trees as sentient beings, and when they use anything from a tree, they thank the tree and the land for the gifts they are bestowed. In Lakota land, the Native women harvested seed pods from animals known as prairie voles, for which they would leave gifts to thank the land for the harvest, and always natural gifts like berries or corn or fat from animals. They then thanked the land vocally for this harvest to show their appreciation of what the land could provide. In Tucson, they use the shade of trees to prevent crops from overheating. This protects the plant somewhat, but the trees also vying for water from the soil, as are the crops. This is why modern farmers use solar panels instead of trees to deflect heat from crops. How is modern farming different from native agricultural techniques? Modern farmers use machinery like tractors to cultivate their land. They also use fertilizer and artificial nutrients like phosphorus, which can be damaging to the soil and the general environment. Modern farmers also don't carefully cultivate everything from the land as the Native Americans do in order to survive. They simply take what is in demand by society. Anyone in management with a business degree will tell a farmer that they should only grow the in-demand crops and to not concern themselves with crop rotation. They'll say that the soil depletes itself from over-farming, and then at that point, they should just replenish the soil with artificial means like phosphorus. So modern society sells these bags of phosphorus, and these factory farmers buy tons of it. They don't concern themselves with whether or not the crops they grow replenish the soil or draw all the vital nutrients from the loam. And so beyond traditional global warming maladies of note, we have peak phosphorus and other scarcity crises on the horizon. Yet the Native American peoples never used anything artificial and managed to sustain farming for hundreds, if not thousands of years. They were able to cultivate the soil by using very basic means without technology or machinery. So how were they able to do this so easily, and how can we learn from their success? So how did the Native Americans replenish their land without the use of phosphorus? Native Americans have the details regarding crop rotation are down to a science. Traditional Native American agriculture does provide solutions to this problem. It has the three sisters staple crops of corn, squash, and the climbing beans. The reasons for this technique of hybrid growing growing are multitudinal. The corn provides support for the runner beans mounting. The runner beans themselves prevent nitrogen loss from the soil, and sometimes the squash proves a natural animal repellent. Nitrogen, which is an aspect of photosynthesis, that is a process of plant growth, is a natural energy source for plants. So why don't modern farmers learn from this method? Modern farmers don't use these techniques in factory farming or modern farming because it complicates production. It's harder to make machinery like tractors to produce such a complex system. Also, the education of the farmers becomes an institutional barrier to complexity because business hates complexity when they can simplify. They simplify by adding phosphorus, and that reduces complexity for the farmers themselves. However, they don't take into account what it does to the soil, the surrounding environment, or the quality of the crops they're aiming to produce. They're mainly concerned with supply and demand. Why hasn't contemporary agriculture learned from indigenous peoples? One way that the Native American technique can be used today in modern society is community-developed farming. Tucson, Arizona, for instance, has envisioned the Tumalak Resilience Gardens, which will cultivate the land while using both native as well as modern techniques like solar panels. It's a life-affirming addition to the already sacred land of Tumamoc Hill, which is sacred to the Tohono O'odham peoples, one of the native tribes of Arizona who care deeply about the future quality of the land and the crops that they grow there. This is a refreshing perspective, as many agricultural colleges don't share this perspective. Instead, they produce students with very deep ties to the methods used in modern factory farming, and thus have no interest in not using pesticides and artificial nutrients, which is damaging to the environment and produces less quality crops as a result. In the future, if agricultural methods are to improve, the mentality of colleges would have to change. They have to change the way they teach farming so that the students of agriculture can hold a different perspective, so they will honor and value the land and crops that they grow on. If students of agriculture would learn from their ancestors, the future of farming can be changed and the quality of future crops can be improved. What about consumer demand for better quality food free of pesticides? Also, there's a concern regarding pesticides in your food. Most people can't afford the privilege of buying only organic food. Organic should be healthier, but unfortunately it has not achieved the status that it should have. This is primarily because it has become a method of virtue signaling, aka organic is the best, so you're better for buying it, instead of actually trying to preserve the land. However, if anything's going to cause a cultural change, it will probably be consumer demand. Most people don't see agriculture as tied into climate change issues, even though it's directly affected by how dry or wet the land is. This directly affects the amount of nutrients, or lacking thereof, the soil has. This directly influences how the amount and quality of the crops, and thus the quality of food, organic or otherwise, for all of us to enjoy. When the land that is used to receiving rain is too dry, it affects the quality of land. This, in turn, affects the quality and sustainability of farming. Any land is an ecosystem, and like all ecosystems, all parts have to work in balance together in order to help things grow. How can society increase consumer awareness of modern farming methods? Increasing consumer awareness of these more sustainable and traditional agricultural techniques may increase the usage of them in larger farms, which creates greater production. Consumers should know what goes into their food and subsequently how they're being cultivated in the fields. The traditional techniques are still being used, and more people should know about them so that they can increase in popularity. It really would require a rejuvenation of these ideas and redevelopment of them so that they can be as profitable as well as being sustainable. You'd have to make it more efficient as well as easier to implement. Imagine developing one plant that grew just like the Three Sisters did. All you'd need to do is plant one thing and that system just grows. Perhaps we can learn from Native Americans' ways and cultivate through natural means like water irrigation techniques and reducing the use of pesticides. The thought of replenishing soil through natural methods is completely plausible. It can be as simple as placing your crops near places of runoff from woodlands, as the Native Americans have done. The techniques used for hundreds of years simply need to be made profitable, and it needs to evolve beyond its traditional foundations in order to thrive. That's all for this video. Thanks for watching.